It was a Saturday. One of the busiest children's parks in Los Angeles was still full of laughter, even as the sun began to set. Parents sat on benches while kids ran wild across the grassy field. But suddenly, a commotion started near the small ice cream cart in the corner of the park. A man rushed out from the crowd. He wore a simple gray t-shirt and sunglasses, but a sharp eye could easily recognize who he was. Robert Downey Jr. Robert running. "Wait, hold on! Where are you going? Hey, little buddy, your mom's not over there." Just then, a boy around 6 or 7 years old was crying as he ran toward the park's exit. Robert had followed him after hearing a woman screaming moments earlier. Mother, shouting in panic, "No, someone's taking my son! Police!" The crowd erupted into chaos. Some people pulled out their phones. Others stared suspiciously at the man with the child. Someone called the police. 3 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up to the park. 2 officers jumped out quickly. Robert was still kneeling beside the child, trying to calm him down. Officer, sharply, "Put your hands in the air. Get on the ground now." Robert in shock. "No, this is a misunderstanding. Officer, cutting him off. "Down, now! I don't want to see your hands!" While the second officer returned the boy to his mother, the first one forcefully handcuffed Robert. Someone in the crowd shouted, bystander, in disbelief, "Wait, isn't that Robert Downey Jr.?" The officers didn't pause. With his hands cuffed behind his back, Robert looked around at the confusion unfolding around him. Robert, tired voice, "I was just trying to help." But by then, the phone cameras were already rolling. The next morning, the headlines exploded. Robert Downey Jr. detained at park, suspected attempt to abduct child? Shocking footage of actor's arrest emerges online. But the truth was still hiding somewhere no one had looked yet. It was 11:40 p.m. In front of the Beverly Hills police station, cameras, microphones, and live broadcast vans were lined up. Reporter, on live TV, were standing outside the station where actor Robert Downey Jr. is reportedly being held. No official statement from the authorities yet, but the allegations are serious. Inside, in a dimly lit interrogation room, Robert sat cuffed to a chair. His face looked tired, not angry, just deeply disappointed. The door opened. A police officer entered with some documents in hand. He sat across from Robert, locking eyes with him. He still didn't seem to grasp the full scope of the situation. Officer, in a formal tone, "Mr. Downey, you're being accused of attempting to approach a child in the park without the mother's permission. That's a very serious allegation." Robert, calm but firm, "I didn't approach anyone. The boy was alone. He was crying, looking for his mother. He was running toward the exit. I was just trying to help. I didn't pick him up. I didn't even touch him. I knelt down and talked to him. Then his mother showed up." Officer, "Then why did she scream at you?" "Multiple witnesses say she shouted, 'He's taking my son!'" Robert, pausing for a moment, "She didn't recognize me. I had a hat on, sunglasses. It was crowded, loud, panicked. She must have been scared, but I was only trying to help." As the officer took notes, another officer quietly entered the room. He leaned in and whispered something. Second officer, softly, "Chief, we might have made a mistake. The mother just gave her statement. She said the arrest wasn't necessary. It was a misunderstanding." The first officer looked up. His eyes showed surprise. His tone softened. "Officer, Mr. Downey, it appears there may have been a misunderstanding. Please bear with us a little longer while we clear things up." Robert took a deep breath. His eyes dropped to the floor. Then he slowly looked up again. The expression in his eyes wasn't anger, it was heartbreak. Robert quietly, "I just didn't want the kid to get hurt. I was trying to protect him. But in the end, I was the one treated like a criminal." At that very moment, social media was in turmoil. The hashtag Justice for Downey was trending on Twitter. Hundreds of thousands of people were sharing the videos, some condemning the police for overreacting, others saying precaution was necessary. But the truth was still hidden, in the shadows. And by morning there wouldn't just be cameras outside the station. There would be an angry crowd too. Morning had come. The crowd in front of the Beverly Hills police station was growing by the minute. People held signs in silence, some watching the arrest video over and over again on their phones. Every movement was broadcast live by the press. At that moment, inside the station's conference room, a high-level meeting was taking place. Police chief, firm and concerned. These images have spread across the entire country. Every word we say now could have irreversible consequences. It appears Mr. Downey is innocent. But why was he there? Why was he alone, talking to a child? We still have no answers. There was a knock on the door. A detective walked in, holding some documents and information taken from Robert's phone. Detective: "Sir, the actor wasn't just there by coincidence. His phone location history shows he's been to that same park at least 6 times in the past 2 weeks." Police chief: "Suspicious. Reason?" Detective: "He's connected to a charity. It's called Second Sunrise, a discreet network that donates to homeless and at-risk children. But Downey's name doesn't appear on any official document. He only gave cash donations and made in-person visits. He specifically asked to stay anonymous." The chief lowered his head. He took a deep breath. Then he removed his glasses and placed them on the table. Police chief: "So, he was helping, quietly, and we put him in handcuffs." Meanwhile, in the interrogation room, Robert still sat with his hands bound. His eyes were turned to the dim ceiling above. It was silent, save for the muffled chants of protesters outside. The door opened. The same officer who had just spoken to the detective entered. This time he had a coffee and some paperwork in hand. Officer, gently: "Mr. Downey, you're free to go. All charges have been dropped." The mother's statement was clear. "Also, we've learned a bit about your charity work." Robert turned to look at him. His face still looked tired, but calmer. "Robert, I'm just paying back a debt. Once, I was lost too, and in that boy's eyes, I saw my own past." The officer looked away. He didn't say anything. He simply unlocked the handcuffs and stepped back. Outside, movement began on the police station steps. Officials were preparing for a press statement. Cameras flashed on. The crowd fell silent. But Robert didn't wait for the apology. He walked out, quietly, through the side door. The sun was just about to rise. He held something in his hand, a small notebook. He tore out one page, a corner folded, full of sketches, and slipped it into his pocket. A young woman approached him. Her eyes were filled with emotion. Woman: "Mr. Downey, that boy is my nephew. Last night, the woman who screamed at you. She's my sister. We know everything now. Please, accept our apology on her behalf. She was just scared." Robert stopped. He looked at her. He smiled, but there was sorrow behind it. "Robert, she doesn't owe me an apology. All I want is for that boy to never feel alone again." The woman lowered her head. The crowd watched in silence behind them. Then, Robert walked away, unhurried, unnoticed. But that morning, it wasn't just a man who walked off. A question lingered in every mind. Why is someone punished for trying to help? The day had barely begun, but the hashtag #JusticeForDowney had already passed millions of mentions on Twitter. Social media was divided. Some said, even a celebrity should be investigated if there's suspicion, while others argued, putting a man in handcuffs for helping a child shows how broken the system really is. Famous names were posting support one after another. Mark Ruffalo shared a photo and wrote, @MarkRuffalo. Turns out Downey's not just a hero on screen. He's fighting quiet battles in real life too. I've got your back, brother. CNN launched a special panel about the incident on their morning program. A heated debate was underway between a former police chief and a law professor. Professor on air. The footage clearly shows the child was running away, and Robert was trying to calm him down. This arrest wasn't just panic. It reeks of bias. Former police chief: "If there's a call, we respond. That's the job." But the tone of that response? The use of handcuffs? I agree. It went too far. At the same time, the Beverly Hills Police Department issued a formal statement. Press spokesperson: "What happened at the scene was the result of an unfortunate series of misunderstandings. Mr. Downey committed no unlawful act. We offer our sincere apologies." But Robert wasn't watching that statement on a TV screen. He was sitting quietly at the edge of a basketball court behind a small neighborhood school. A few kids stood beside him, basketballs in hand, eyes full of admiration. One kid, Shyly, You're Iron Man, right? Robert smiled and nodded. Then he knelt to the child's level. Robert, sometimes just being yourself is the greatest superpower there is. At that moment, the school principal approached from the sidelines. Principal, with a sheepish smile. It's good to see you back here. When those kids talk to you, you can see hope in their eyes. Whatever happened in the park doesn't matter. What you're doing here does. Robert bowed his head slightly. In that quiet moment, he remembered his own youth, the rehab center he went to in his early 20s, and a little boy he once met there. That was why he kept going to the park. That boy. Years later, he'd been lost to the streets. And Robert had never been able to fill the void that left behind. Robert, in a whisper. This time, I just wanted to save someone else. His eyes welled up, but he didn't look away. The kids started playing ball again. Robert sat down on the bench and simply watched. But out in the world, his story was no longer just an incident. It had become a symbol. And for the first time, some people began to ask themselves, to truly know someone, doesn't it take more than just a headline? The next morning, a crowd began gathering in front of the Los Angeles courthouse. Some came to protest, others out of curiosity. But all eyes were fixed on the same spot, the steps where Robert Downey Jr. was slowly making his way up. Reporters rushed forward with microphones. Mr. Downey, the police department has issued an apology. Why are you still filing a formal complaint? Robert paused. He removed his sunglasses. A silence spread through the crowd like a wave. Because this isn't about me. I'm famous. Everyone knows my name. But last night, hundreds of people experienced the same treatment, and none of them had cameras. Standing behind him was a young woman, his attorney, early 30s. But her posture carried the weight of seasoned experience. Her name, Lena Alvarez. Lena, turning to the press. On behalf of Mr. Downey, we are initiating a formal legal complaint. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It's a clear example of how prejudice becomes institutionalized. And reporters scribbled notes, live streams lit up. On Twitter, a new hashtag was climbing the charts. Hashtag #StandWithDowney. Meanwhile, inside police headquarters, tension was rising. Officers were reviewing the footage from their body cams. A captain walked into the room. The footage clearly shows the child didn't scream. In fact, Robert was calming him down. This isn't just a poor reaction. This is a failure in training. One of the officers lowered his head. He had followed protocol without understanding what was really happening. And now, that protocol had wrongly painted a man as a criminal in front of the whole world. At the same time, Robert and Lena arrived at a press conference. When they took the stage, dozens of journalists sat waiting. Behind them, a simple phrase was displayed in bold. Not a moment, but a systemic problem. Robert, stepping to the mic. I'm filing this lawsuit because no one should ever be handcuffed for trying to protect a child. A mother might panic. A police officer might make a mistake, but the system, it must learn to fix the mistakes it keeps repeating. The room fell silent. A few in the audience wiped their eyes. Then Lena stepped forward. This case isn't just about Robert Downey Jr. It's for the hundreds of unnamed people who go unheard, and we're taking this fight all the way. In that moment, it wasn't just a press conference. An actor was speaking, but his stage was no longer Hollywood. It was the podium of justice, and with every word spoken there, society was being asked, once again, to look itself in the mirror. 2 days had passed since the incident. The case had officially been filed in court, and social media was still flooded with footage of Robert. But now, public focus was shifting to one question. Why was Robert Downey Jr. alone in that park? The answer came the next morning, printed in bold on the front page of the Los Angeles Times. Downey's quiet mission. He visited that park every Saturday, and no one knew. The article featured an interview. The man speaking was the elderly owner of the ice cream cart in the park, Manuel Ortega. Manuel. He came every week. Bought ice cream for the kids without ever giving his name. That boy, Mateo, he lost his mother just a few weeks ago. Robert had seen him before, sometimes from a distance, quietly trying to help. The story exploded. TV networks lined up to verify the report. Several local volunteers began speaking up, and they all echoed the same thing. Robert had been going to that park for months, quietly, just to help. Around the same time, Lena Alvarez made a brief statement to the press from Robert's home. Lena: Mr. Downey was at that park not for publicity, not for recognition, but to support children whose names he didn't even know. The moment he was handcuffed, that is the true tragedy of this story. Robert was sitting silently in his living room, watching the coverage on screen. Beside him was an old photograph, a young boy smiling on a snowy street wearing a torn jacket, cheeks red from the cold. Lena walked in and noticed the photo. Lena: that picture, who is it? Robert, softly, distant: It's me. I was 7. That day, someone bought me a hot chocolate, never asked my name. I never forgot. And in that moment, Lena understood. Robert wasn't fighting this battle just for justice. He was doing it for the little boy he used to be. Later that day, before the scheduled hearing, the police department issued a public statement. The police chief stepped forward in front of a crowd. Behind him, the Los Angeles Police Department seal gleamed in the sunlight. Police chief: Based on video footage, witness statements, and recent developments, we acknowledge that the actions taken against Mr. Downey were disproportionate, and we sincerely apologize. But by now, the apology couldn't undo what had happened. This had grown far beyond a personal misunderstanding. It had become a reckoning with the system itself. That evening, on CNN, a legal scholar summed it up perfectly. Professor: Downey may be an actor, but in this case, he became the voice of our collective conscience. And that night, once again, Robert stared at the old photograph. Maybe that little boy was still somewhere inside him, but now, he was no longer alone. The next morning, the crowd gathered outside the Los Angeles criminal court was anything but ordinary. People holding signs stood quietly but determined. Some signs read, "He was a hero, not a criminal. Justice for Downey." Inside the courtroom, the judge reviewed the case file while the media broadcasted live from outside. The prosecutor made a brief statement. Then the floor was given to Robert's lawyer. But something unexpected happened. Judge, looking directly at Robert: Mr. Downey, before your attorney speaks, I want to give you the floor. Is there anything you wish to say about this incident? Robert paused for a moment, then stood up. The courtroom fell completely silent. Robert, calm but emotional: Your Honor, I was only talking to one child in that park, because that child's fear was once my own fear. I never tried to be a hero in that park. I just helped a child who was waiting for someone to stop and reach out. Several reporters lowered their heads. Some in the audience wiped away tears. Robert, continuing: Being here today is not a shame. The real shame is confusing help with crime. And if in this country even good intentions are questioned, then how will we protect our children? The judge nodded slightly. There was a brief silence, then he set down his pen. Judge, the court has decided to dismiss all charges against Mr. Downey. Additionally, an official letter of apology will be issued due to the misjudgment of the incident. No applause broke out in the courtroom. But that silence was more powerful than any applause. When Robert stepped outside, the crowd parted to let him pass. Cameras, microphones, and shouts surrounded him as he walked on. But something caught everyone's attention. Robert said nothing until he reached the park's entrance. Suddenly, Robert stopped. The crowd stopped too. He slowly sat down on the ground, resting his hands on his knees, his eyes fixed on the children's playground. A reporter approached him. Reporter, softly: Mr. Downey, after everything that's happened, does coming back here still mean something to you? Robert, without looking up: The meaning started here. And it's not going to end here, because this place still belongs to the children. At that moment, a child playing in the park turned and looked at him, smiled. Robert smiled back, and everyone realized the story wasn't ending here. Something new was just beginning. 3 days after the incident, the park was crowded again, but this time there was a different atmosphere. Mothers sitting on benches, children playing on the grass, people lining up for ice cream. They were all waiting for the same person, and that person appeared right at 4 p.m. at the park entrance. Robert Downey Jr. was wearing a simple white shirt. His hat and sunglasses were on again, but this time, not to hide his face, just out of habit. He walked slowly, people around respectfully kept their distance. No one asked for selfies, no one shouted, because everyone knew this wasn't a moment for a show. Manuel Ortega waved from inside his ice cream cart. Manuel, laughing, "1 vanilla, 1 chocolate. Your usual order for the kids is ready, amigo." Robert smiled. He pulled out some bills from his pocket and offered them, but Manuel stopped him with a hand. "Manuel, today it's on me." He took the ice creams and walked into the park. He quietly sat down under a tree. He took a vanilla cone in his hand. He gestured toward 2 siblings playing nearby. The kids approached shyly. Robert, smiling, "1 for you, 1 for your sibling. But first, promise me, you'll share, okay?" The children nodded. They took the ice cream and ran off. A reporter was photographing this moment from a distance, without a flash. At the same time, a new video started spreading on social media. Days after the incident, footage of Robert quietly handing out ice cream to children in the park. The caption read, "Justice lives not only in courts, but also in an ice cream cone." That evening on the news, a commentator on TV, "This isn't just about a wrongful arrest, it's a confrontation with society's lack of empathy." Robert Downey Jr. reminded us of something we've forgotten. Sometimes the greatest heroism is simply stopping to listen to a child. The next day, the mayor of Los Angeles made a surprise announcement. "Mayor, in front of cameras, one of our city's most cherished parks will from today be known by a new name, Hope Grove, Robert Downey Jr. Park. Because hope sometimes grows through the quiet determination of one person." Robert watched the news at home. Lena was beside him. For a long time, he said nothing. He just stared at the screen. Then he did something. He pulled out his phone, opened an old message thread. Years ago, someone he didn't know had thanked him for the hot chocolate he gave as a child. Robert slowly swiped his fingers across the screen. Then he turned to Lena. "Robert, I think it's my turn now." That night, he sent his first email to start a new children's aid program at the park. Because the story wasn't ending, it was only beginning. A week later, at the Los Angeles courthouse, a small hearing was held. Robert Downey Jr. sat with his lawyer. Across was a police official. The detention was unfair and disproportionate. The police department has apologized and disciplinary actions are underway. This case highlights bigger social issues. Police training will be updated to prevent this. Mr. Downey, your behavior has been commendable. Thank you. Robert gave a brief statement. "I saw a child crying and helped. I wasn't a famous actor then, just someone who had to be there." His words sparked change. The LAPD launched community empathy and bias training with Robert as a keynote speaker. Robert's charity Quiet Saturdays started, where volunteers quietly help children in parks every week. Time magazine later featured him. Headline, Robert Downey Jr., the loud voice of quiet help. Final scene, Robert in the park, giving ice cream to a child. "Did you get this for me?" "No, for someone like you." Sometimes the greatest heroism is saying, "I'm here." Words fade in. Justice lives not only in courts but in parks, looks, and silence.